I think what's happening is this season's going to be a massive, massive test for the production team and MAPPA because they absolutely have to nail the next arc of this anime. Will probably change anime history.
David has some Jujutsu Kaisen for us. What you got for us?
Yeah, season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen is here. The first 5 episodes are now officially out. And I have to say, I'm a little surprised. I think a lot of people understand that this arc is not the best arc in the anime in the manga. The best arc is to come. So I think people were understanding of that. And so what surprised me is the change in style. This feels like a completely different show than what I watched in seasons 1 and 2. The tones and the colors are so much more neutral. The animation is more stylized. The art choices are much different than what I would have anticipated. There's been a lot of callbacks to Western media, and particularly in the most recent 2 episodes. In episode 4, there's a very specific scene from Kill Bill called The Bride versus the Crazy 88. That scene is basically not shot for shot, but there's a lot of shots that are very identical and heavy inspiration taken from it, and it looks really good in my opinion. I think it turned out very well. There has been, because of the way the arc is, there's been a lot of dialogue, and I think some people don't like that because the last 2 seasons were so action heavy and they felt more like an anime with really cool action fight sequences, where this almost feels more cinematic. It feels less like anime and more cinematic, stylized art. Perfect example of that was episode 4 when the massive reference to Kill Bill and everything that happened, in that scene. And then in episode 5, we finally get introduced to Hakari, which so many people are so excited about. I can't remember if I heard the creator specifically say this, but he has kind of based his character off Tyler Durden from Fight Club, where he essentially runs kind of an illegal sort of fighting ring. And what is a direct callback to the movie Fight Club is when the protagonist, Yuji, is trying to join the fighting ring. The bouncer is about to punch the protagonist in the face and says, "The first rule is you don't talk about Fight Club." Like, that is the literal thing that he says, which I think is really cool for a Japanese anime to do that, to take heavy inspiration from Western media and things like Kill Bill and Fight Club. And Hikari kind of resembles a little bit of Tyler Durden. He's very much of a gambler, as they say, and kind of a swindler, very tough and rugged. Part of the reason why I think it has surprised me is because I have not watched an anime where I know the outcome. I've always watched an anime and never like read a manga beforehand as like I watched it. And so this one, with how much hype was around Jujutsu Kaisen, I think it has ruined the viewing experience a little bit for me. Just knowing what's going to happen. Like, I don't know the sequences and the art style and whatnot, but I know what's going to happen. So I think that has ruined the experience a little bit for me. But this last shot with Hakari and the main protagonist, Yuji, this shot right here, this shot has caused a lot of buzz because this shot lasts for, to my knowledge, 4 minutes and 11 seconds, which is foreshadowing for something in the future that is yet to be revealed about Hakari's character. But this is I really love the creative direction they did this, because this could have been just a generic anime style of editing. They could have cut to the character's face. They could have and see their reactions and what they're thinking and blah 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 blah. But it stays on this shot. Meanwhile, this shot was filmed in live action by 2 people. two people were doing all of these character movements, and then the animation was rotoscoped and traced on top of the live action in the technique known as rotoscoping, which I haven't seen in anime do that. I've seen other things do that. And if you do an entire movie, which is what actually like there was a Lord of the Rings animated movie that would like the whole movie was rotoscoped. So if you do an entire thing that way, it almost looks cheesy. But because I think they had it in this specific moment, there was just so much tension built because everyone is expecting a cut. You're expecting a cut. And it just lingers and it lingers. But the characters are moving, they're talking, they're walking. It looks like a normal conversation, but it's a very tense moment because the protagonist doesn't want to reveal the identity to Hakari, Yuji. He doesn't want to reveal his identity to him because he knows that Hakari's not going to like that. They go back and forth in dialogue, and then a very tense moment happens, and the phone rings. Hakari doesn't answer his phone. It's his phone that rings. He doesn't answer the phone, but that moment alone doesn't break the tension, but it heightens the tension because it adds, the sound of a phone to this kind of tense conversation in and of itself. And then there's the moment of realization, finding out, Akari eventually finds out the identity of Yuji. And then while staying on this shot, Akari goes and, attacks Yuji. And then I believe it cuts, and that's how the episode ends. But there's an action sequence, very brief, where Akari gets up, throws a glass, uses some sorcery, attacks him, doesn't move or whatever. It looks really good. It's very brief, obviously. But I love the creative decision to do that as opposed to do it the traditional anime style, which is like very generic and, cutting to close-ups on people's faces and over emotion in a way, which there's definitely a time and place for it. I think what's happening is this season's going to be a massive, massive test for the production team and MAPPA because they absolutely have to nail the next arc of this anime. It will probably change anime history. It will probably change how things are done because of how popular the manga was. So almost feel like they're testing, like they're seeing how people are reacting to the unique kind of creative decisions that are made, trying to refine those as much as possible for the next arc, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because I like what they have done so far in a kind of boring arc to start anyway.
All right. That all sounds super interesting, especially not only the ties to cinema, the ties to different films, the ties to Fight Club, the ties to Kill Bill, the fact that they're implementing, and I love that with this scene. So you said this scene went on for like 4 minutes?
To my knowledge, it was 4 minutes, 11 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. So it felt absurdly long, but it stayed on this shot, right?
I believe so. Yes, it did. It stayed on this shot. The
Okay.
time, I think that's what I heard. I need to go back and check, double check. I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I mean to build tension in that way sounds super ideal. And yeah, the way you described it was I could totally sense the tension that was going on in there. And especially the the method, like you said, rotoscoping over an actual live performance or live depiction of that scene. That sounds great. I love that. That's just like implementing the real world within the fantastical. And I think to do that is a great way at selling realism. I'm trying to think like, well, the way they use mocap in video games, it's
Yeah,
just a great way to just make it feel more realistic. And
absolutely. And it can be very difficult to make something feel realistic, especially in an anime with
oh yeah,
crazy physics and magical
crazy.
powers. Like it can be animators can cut a lot of corners and you're not immersed. It doesn't feel real. A lot of people are really, really turned off by that. And so that's why I love that they did this.
All right, guys, that is David's talk on Jujutsu Kaisen. It was like episode 5, right?
The first 5 episodes, kind of a
First
recap
5.
of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Sounds super interesting. Let us know your guys' thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen first arc. Curious to hear your thoughts.